Happy place. During my early recovery from lung surgery, I would bend my knees and stretch them out again, curl my toes, then flex them hard. I would cry and whisper to my husband, Sparrow, "Please kill me." He'd just stare at me and hold my hand, which made me wonder if what actually came out was more like, "Please kill me." The nurses all told us that lung surgery was more painful than open heart. Well, that explains a lot, I said, wondering if I was speaking English. They would smile in that patient nurse way and tell me to go to my happy place. What I wanted to say was, there's no happy place on earth that'll get me through this right now. How about you just give me some more of that morphine and we'll call it even? But I kept that to myself. The expression happy place always made me roll my eyes anyway. Makes me think of ruby red slippers. I mean, seriously? Even as a kid, I knew wishing wouldn't make it so. I don't care how many times you click your heels together. Maybe I was too cynical. It just didn't seem to work for me. Every breath was a sword through my chest. The machine would beep every few minutes because I would stop breathing to make the pain stop. "Breathe," Sparrow would say. I'd breathe. Then the sword. Then I'd stop again for a while. "Beep, beep, beep, beep." My mom would say, "Breathe, honey." I'd stare at them. "Plebes, kill me." I checked the giant clock. 3 hours until my next dose. On second thought, where were those red slippers when you needed them? Nurses were heroes. They were good to me. I memorized all their names, even the aides. Smiled when they came in. I wanted to win them over. I would be their favorite patient. I needed them to like me. The person who couldn't move was going to be their easiest patient. They would go home and talk to their families about what a joy I was. I needed to feel safe. Funny how even with a chest full of knives, my first instinct was to make sure everyone in the room liked me. I was the one who advocated for other people, the one who was vigilant in giving care. If I was going to surrender my body to strangers, I would need to make them my friends first. "Okay, maybe you're right," I'd say. "Maybe I could try again." So I'd lie there, sifting through the morphine, searching for the happy in one scene after the other. There I'd be, eating chocolate. Lasted 1 second. Ah, yes, peanut butter. Half a second. Chocolate and peanut butter. Okay, 2 seconds. My dinner plate dahlias showing off in the sun, moonflowers revealing themselves at night. About a minute. My dog Nimoy is a puppy chasing his nemesis the squirrel. 2 minutes. Listening to David Attenborough narrate a nature show. 3. Riding Japan's bullet train with Sparrow, who splurged on the luxury car because of my train fetish. He's making me laugh as farms and villages blur past at 200 miles per hour, while Mount Fuji sits impossibly calm amid all that speed. I open my eyes. Check the clock. 4 minutes. Stab, stab, holding my breath, and then beep, 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 beep. "Breathe," Sparrow would plead. "Please kill me." Clearly, I needed something bigger than this. I reached back further into the archives. There I was in the crib, looking through the wooden slats and hearing my young mom singing, her gold hair shining in the sun from the window, the yellow curtains billowing against the papered walls. Wonderful. 2 minutes. Happy place. Skipping over the sparkling sidewalks in front of the library, mesmerized by the tiny flashes of light I was stepping on, believing they must be diamonds, just Mom and me, laughing, hand in hand, before my brother was born, and everything changed. 3 minutes. I pressed on. I was 35, standing inside a giant waterfall in British Columbia, so beautiful that I stayed there, in my tiny black bikini until I shivered and my lips turned blue. My love already on the other side, laughing and begging me to hurry up and get out. I tried to make that my happy place, but when I go there, I see his eyes sliding away from mine again and again toward whatever was younger walking by. We had just come down from a mountaintop where he told me he never loved anyone like this. This was it, that he was sure. He would be my Shiva and I his Radha. Our eyes locked, his heart beating against mine. When we hiked back down the mountain, I was still glowing, breathing in the sweet scents from the wildflowers next to the blood-red amanita mushrooms. And there, at the end of the trail, a young woman with long blonde hair walked past, maybe 18, not even glancing at him. He let go of my hand and his head followed her until she was gone. I kept walking and left him standing there. When he made it back to our tent, he asked, "Where did you go? I turned around and you were gone." It was as if the mountaintop hadn't happened, as if I wasn't standing right there, my empty hand still warm. The girl with the braces in the restaurant booth came later, just the last one, in a long parade of anyone other than me. That man broke my heart and took the waterfall with him. I opened my eyes and checked the clock. 5 extremely long minutes. I was sitting under the curly willow I'd planted after losing my son Yogi. I'd done everything right, eaten right, walked every day, given up drinking, even moved from a duplex in Chicago to the middle of cow country. Being his mother was supposed to redeem me. So when I had to leave without him after the morning he was born, I died too. And when we buried him at the tiny Newton Valley Cemetery, tucked away in the frozen woods of Wisconsin, I stared down into the small black rectangle in the ground and imagined jumping in on top of his little pine box. I wish so much that I could be buried with him. My nervous system was fried. I'd moved to an intentional community because I couldn't do anything else. Forget about getting a job, I couldn't even drive, couldn't think straight. For hours I hid inside its lime green leaves, away from the harshness of the sun and the company of others. It was my secret den. But now I can't separate the swaying arms of that graceful tree from the aching arms of that young woman who just wanted to hold her only child one last time. Happy place, I muttered. For some reason, all I could hear was that old song, "Put on a happy face," which now that I think about it, was exactly the problem. I had smiled at every boss of every job I secretly hated, smiled through every relationship I made myself small enough to fit into, even after a friend once asked, "Why can't you just write a happy song for a change?" I had thought, "Happy? I'm not your monkey," and almost sang her the happy birthday song. But what I actually said was, "Okay, I'll try," with a big fat smile on my face. Even as a girl, being upset wasn't acceptable, unless I did it in the privacy of my own room, and quietly. Even singing in my room was too much. Apparently, it was killing my dad, and since I didn't want him to die, I practiced with headphones and taught myself to whisper sing. There was only one kid who was allowed to act out in our household, and that kid was my brother. Apparently, he had the excuse of being deaf. He didn't have a language yet. My job was to be the big sister and be patient. He couldn't understand why when I moved my mouth, I magically got what I wanted. So when moving his mouth didn't work, he just got loud and louder until I ran around guessing what he wanted. Anything to make the siren stop. I'd point and ask, "Hot dogs? Tater tots? Fish sticks? Lucky Charms? Lucky Charms?" That one always worked. That kid could have survived on Lucky Charms alone. Luckily for him, that wasn't my call. Once he finished off an entire box of cereal after refusing to eat dinner, Mom found the empty box and showed it to him, frowning. He just shook his head while pointing to himself, and then pointed to me, nodding, eyes wide. I didn't even like Lucky Charms. I was a Count Chocula girl. Another time he broke something and did the same thing. I'd say, "He did it! He's lying!" But nobody ever believed that he could lie. So I'd get in trouble for blaming the poor deaf kid as well. He's deaf. He's not St. Francis, I would think. The worst part was that as soon as we were alone again, he'd snicker at me and make a pouty face with his little fist turning in front of his eyes, mocking my crying, then silently laugh and point at me when he saw that he had succeeded in bringing me to tears. There were times I actually thought about strangling him. Great-Grandma Norma had Alzheimer's. She heard his high-pitched wail one afternoon and said, "I think he'll make a great singer one day." What the hell? I was the singer. That was my dream. I almost imitated him to see if I could get the same response out of her. But I loved Norma and wanted to please her, so I smiled with fingers in my ears. That was about the time I started walking through the house at night with the lights off, practicing to be blind, just in case. I was done. My finger was on the trigger now, ready to call the nurse. Wait a minute. Here's one. September 2017. I was heading down our driveway, checking my rear view, watching my husband and dog get smaller in a cloud of gravel dust. I had booked a cheap room on a remote island in British Columbia for my birthday and planned on being there for a month, alone, to record some songs I'd written. Just me, the Honda Hybrid handed down from my mom, recording gear, Canadian money left over from my earlier trip with Waterfall Guy, and a map of BC. The island took 2 ferries to reach, and as luck would have it, the owner needed to go to Vancouver for a month, so I got the waterfront house to myself. And at 53, I would finally be on my own for the first time in my life. I made my own fire to keep the house warm, carried loads of wood upstairs to feed the iron behemoth, and in the mornings, I'd take my camera and Earl Grey down to the shore. There I'd sit on a damp timber log, sipping the bitter heat and admiring the patterns the birds made against a life-size Bob Ross painting. But after the first week, the solitude started to annoy me. The house didn't even have a TV, so I couldn't watch movies to distract myself. In the nothingness, memories began to surface, and I felt myself starting to unravel. Even my skin felt too tight. Recording was out of the question. I was too anxious to sit still. I had kept myself busy, and now there was nothing left to do but stop. And after I stopped moving, they found me. The stories I hadn't known were still there, the ones that had waited the longest. I stayed still and let them come. I sat and sat until my heart ached worse than my back. And then I cried and keened until the rafters creaked. "Come on! Is that all you've got?" I wailed. Until one morning, I was as empty as my tear ducts. And I laughed. Not at anything. Maniacally. The kind that would have gotten me committed in an earlier era. In my bare feet and swollen eyes, I ran through the house. Nothing had changed. The sun was still making patterns on the cold wooden floor. The birds were still calling me outside to witness their new sunrise painting. So why did everything feel so strange? I raced to the beach in my nightgown, laughing, singing at the top of my lungs, "I am one with it all!" The wind whipped through my curls and turned my hair into dandelion fluff. I picked up a black rock with a white ring around it and laughed at the thought that I was holding Saturn in the palm of my hand. I plopped down on the cold sand, felt the dampness soak through, and didn't care. I just sat there smiling like a lunatic, at the tears streaming down my face, making steam on my cheeks, at the waves beating the rocks, at the heartbreak of a young woman. I was smiling at the bird song, singing mine back to them, smiling at all of it, the sadness and the wonder, both. I'd planned to record 4 sad songs. I came home with one. Spoiler alert, it was a happy song. Damn it. For a month, I didn't have to smile at all. And then I couldn't stop. All I heard was quiet, only the sound of my own heart. My hand fell away from the call button. I had no idea what time it was, and I didn't care. Their waterfall belongs to someone else now, but the smile is all mine.